Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy. This is the Timex Q Reissue Watch. First off, though, I want to thank very much my Patreon patrons who not only make the channel possible, but make it very easy for me to, just sit there and say, you know what, I should check one of those guys out and then do it. That is absolutely a wonderful thing, and it brings me a great deal of joy. They make the channel possible, as well as making this review possible. So thank you again for that, Patreon patrons. Next thing, let's do some measurements here. Go ahead and do this in metric, because I'd like to use some units that make sense for a change in my life. This is about 38 millimeters. Depending on how you want to measure it exactly where. That's a beautiful thing. The overall, the inner size of this guy comes in around 29 millimeters. The back side of it is a little weird because you've got this door on here, but I'd say it's a reasonable thickness for it is like 12 millimeters or so, which is relatively thin. And then it also does have, although it doesn't look like it, it does have a replaceable strap, and so we can measure that out, and it looks to be about 18 millimeter worth of strap on the back there. Although that won't look quite as nice because it doesn't flare out as the bracelet does. So there you go. And then finally, this is, although it is from Timex, the company that, many people know and love as a watch company, this is a reissue of a vintage piece. And so, it's kind of that's what we got going on here. So let's go ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, the ugly of this very interesting little watch right here. So on the good side, to start with, it's a nice size. I'm so glad that companies are realizing that, not all hands are equipped for a 50 millimeter monstrosity. And so, having this released in 38 millimeter size, that's great. It works well, it wears well, and, even on my relatively small wrist, it looks pretty decent, so that's good. It is also relatively thin, which is something that definitely should be the case for quartz watches, but isn't always, and that's a nice thing as well. Next thing, you'll see that the case on this guy is actually, there is some polish to it. Right here, you can see, right there, there's a case, and that's a beautiful thing. I appreciate that you've got the polish up here, as well as here, and here, as well as it's just got some nice details to it. The case polishing is actually a lot better than I expected for a Timex at this kind of a price point. So there you go. Next thing, this has a fine movement in it. It is a quartz movement, and quartz watches, by the way, you can see it ticking along there. They are, generally speaking, the better choice for most humans because they are accurate, they are durable, and this has been both accurate and durable. It also features a day and a date function, so you can see here it is, well, not actually Saturday the 4th, but nevertheless, you can do that, and you also can quick set the day. Here we go. Come on. There we go. So now it is Saturday the 5th. That is much more accurate. So there is that there. Next thing, this guy has a GMT bezel. Now, that sounds really fancy, but basically what it means is that you have the ability to change the position of this bezel bidirectionally. It doesn't click or anything. It's just friction. But you can change it such that you can represent another time zone. So for instance, if I move it this way, such that the 12 o'clock is at my 3 o'clock, given that I am in Pacific time, this actually gives me the time zone for Johannesburg, South Africa. I can look down at my watch right now and I can know that, okay, my hour hand is right here. And so what that actually means is that in Joburg, it's actually just a little bit past 1 a.m. And so that's good to know. Of course, I need to keep track of AM and PM because it's not 24-hour, but still. That can actually be a very useful complication if there's somebody that you care about or just something going on. If you collaborate with folks overseas, it's very nice to be able to look down and say, oh, yeah, I can shoot them an email, but they're not going to answer me for 6 hours. And so that can be a nice little detail. And the fact that it is bidirectional means, it's true to its roots, and that can be a function or a useful function there. There is not a GMT hand, though. I want to make that very clear. There is not an additional hand that shows me what time it is, wherever it is. But it is definitely a GMT bezel, so that's good. Next thing, this has an easy swap battery. What I mean by that is that you can see there is just this little guy in the back here, and it says right there what kind of battery you need to use, and you can just pop this guy loose right here using a standard coin of some variety or another, and then you can get in there and replace this battery quite easily. What this means is that you basically, see, right there, it exposes enough of the movement that you can get in there and grab that battery. You can see it's still got a case seal and everything like that, but this just makes it very, very easy to swap that battery out, and means that, sure, it's a quartz watch, but if the battery runs out, well, you just buy an extra battery at the freaking grocery store, and then you bring it home and you install it. Having those little battery doors, and making sure to really kind of get that guy torque down there to make sure everything's sealed up. But having that kind of a battery door, although it definitely can reduce the water resistance, and in fact it has here, it means that you basically don't need a jeweler for this. And the other reason that you don't need a jeweler is because of the bracelet. The bracelet approach is interesting. So when we close this guy, what we do here is we hook this first set of hooks over this bar right here, and then you hook the second part down here and it clicks shut. And so the inside of the bracelet stays inside the bracelet. It's not flopping around or anything like that. So it works pretty damn well. But the thing is, let's say that you decide, oh, actually, you give it to a friend or something like that, and they've got a much larger wrist. All you need to do is use any kind of conventional tool here and pop this open, and then that allows you to move the position of this little slider along here. And that way you can, when you secure it back down again, it is quite secure. As soon as I get it properly, because you kind of have to have it positioned at the right point in the there we go. Yeah. And now it's a much wider, much bigger bracelet. So you can very easily swap this between people. Or if your wrist swells a little bit, you can just pop this guy loose and redo that again later. That is a very nice thing. And so basically this watch you can own and use and wear for many, many years without ever having to talk to a jeweler about it. That could be a very nice thing, especially if you don't like your jeweler. If you don't like your jeweler, get a better jeweler, though. Just saying. But anyways, so to me, all of that is the good here, is that you've got an easy-to-adjust bracelet, an easy-to-swap battery, pardon me, both of which meaning you never need to go anywhere. You can do all the work on the watch yourself. Has a GMT-style bezel on there. It has a decent movement and a very nice size. On the great side, to me, there is a lot of style here for this price. The price on this guy is $180. And you know what? In the watch game, that's actually really freaking cheap. But it's up there, but there's a lot of stuff here going on. You not only do you have a Pepsi-style bezel, which is certainly in for GMTs these days. That's Rolex's bestseller right now, or the Pepsi bezel GMT mask. I don't know if it's their bestseller, but either way, it's one of the hot things they got going on right there. But you've also got some independent things that are not Rolexy. It's not just like an homage. You have the squared off style case here, which almost looks a little bit like an oyster quartz or something like that. You know, there's a lot of style here, coupled with this bracelet, which is not a Jubilee style bracelet, but kind of looks like it at some low level. And, you know, there's a lot of style what you got going on here for a fairly low price. And so to me, I'd say the great part, even though the style isn't going to be for everybody, I think for a lot of people, this is really going to appeal to them, and it's going to come in at a price point that a lot of folks aren't going to be able to object to too strongly. So, to me at least, that's what's great, is the style for the money here. On the bad side, start with, it is a very basic quartz movement in here. It has no solar capacity or anything like that. Again, you can swap the battery easy, so not a big deal. There's not radio control or anything, so it's not getting updates from the satellite or from the atomic time. It's not even, frankly, hitting all the markers as it goes around there. You can see it's slightly off every one of those second markers. This is a very, you know, it's sort of a fashion quartz movement. I don't know if it's a Timex proprietary movement or somebody else's, but it's about as vanilla of a quartz movement as you can get, and so, you know, there is that. Next thing, there isn't the GMT hand. They're careful not to call it a GMT watch. It's got the bezel, which actually can do pretty good at keeping track of the time zone, but still, if you look at this as like, oh, it's like a Rolex GMT Master, but cheaper, no, it's missing one big thing. So, there you go. Next thing, this has a quick set date, so it's very easy to change the date, but it's not easy to you can't change the day of the week effectively. That's not how this works. Now, mind you, and so if you want to change the day of the week, you have to pull it all the way out, and then, you know, pull it all the way out, there you go, and then keep scrolling through over and over and over again to get to the next day. And by the way, you just saw it also has Spanish in there. And then you can just keep doing it over and over and over again, etc. So that takes definitely a little while, especially if you've had the crown pulled out for a little while. But, you know, hey, it is what it is. Next thing, this is a bi-directional bezel, but it is not clicky in any way. You know, good bezels tend to have a little bit of cliction to them so that they don't get jostled out of place, whereas this guy very easily turns. So you find yourself regularly having to readjust where the bezel is. If that's important to you, like, oh, okay, now I've lost track. But whatever, that's not a big deal at this price point. Although, actually, that price point, we can talk about that a little bit. You know what? $180. Pardon me. In the watch game, it's pretty good. But I don't know. It's not great either. I'd like to see these guys landing a little cheaper. It's Timex. They're not doing higher end stuff, and they've got enough little issues in the details here that I feel like that's a little bit high. I'd like to see this. This would be a lot more compelling landing at 125 or $100 than it is at 180. I think that's starting to get a little bit up there. Next thing, the crystal on this guy is acrylic. Now, to be fair, that is period accurate. This is a throwback watch, and most of the watches back then also had bad crystals, but acrylic has the advantage you can polish it up very easily, but it also has the disadvantage that it scratches up very easily. And so it's very, very easy to scratch this watch, and that's not something I particularly like. The lume on this guy is pretty awful. I'll charge it off camera with a bright light, and that'll make it look way better than it actually is. But even still, right now it looks like it's fine. But in a couple of seconds, I'll check back in. You can already see that there are dark spots starting to form in the hour indices. Basically, after a little bit of time, there's really not lume except on the hands. That's okay, but it's just not great. I'd like to see them do better. Also, I'll highlight that the indices here, even when they're not charged with lume, have a little bit of a lime green to them that I didn't expect. I figured that was going to be white rather than limey. And that doesn't quite do it for me. Next thing, the handset on these guys is a little bit weird, right? What we can see here is that, clearly if they went with the full-on Mercedes hands, where it's got the three subdivisions inside there, that would look like a Rolex homage. That's not great, but instead it looks like they kind of said, okay, so Rolex GMT Master, right, guys? Yeah. We shouldn't use those hands. Let's knock the pot out of the middle. Good enough. And so it ends up feeling very lazy. It feels very weird. It's like, did you forget to design that part? I don't know. Whatever, but okay. Next thing, this is only 50 atmospheres worth of water resistance. I'm sorry, 50 meters worth of water resistance. 5 atmospheres. I always screw that up. Oh, my God. What that basically means is that this should be fine in wet conditions, I guess, but you can't really trust that. And over time, I wouldn't necessarily go swimming with this guy. You probably could get away with it, and for $180, I guess, but it's just not super water resistant there. I'd like for them to go the extra mile there. At some level, I suspect it's because of your battery door in the back there, and that is a nice convenience feature for a lot of folks. But I don't know. I'm not a big fan of that. And then finally, the availability on these is a little weird. Because they're doing them in drops. The first time they all sold out, very quickly. In fact, before I could buy one, the second drop they stuck around a little longer. Hopefully they'll do other drops in the future, but I'd kind of like for them to just, make enough of them, guys. Just saying. And so availability is a little weird, and it's only through Timex. So on the bad side, availability is not great. 50 meters of water resist, not amazing. Handset's a little weird. The lume is kind of crappy and also lime greeny. The acrylic crystal doesn't impress me too much. $180 is a fine price, I guess, but it's not really doing it for me. It's got a bi-directional but non-clicky bezel. Quick set date, but not day. No GMT hand, of course, and it is a very basic quartz movement. On the ugly side, and this is the thing that killed the watch for me, this bracelet, look, I love my wife. My wife loves me, but I really wish I could find somebody who loved me as much as this bracelet loves eating arm hair. This bracelet is absolutely terrible on the wrist for me. I am what some might call a Yeti. This is a situation for me. Every damn moment I was wearing this was trying to pull out an arm hair for me. I hated this watch for that. It was to the extent where I wore it for probably a total of 12 hours. And each time it was just I need to wear this watch. As it pulls another one, I need to wear this watch. If you are one of those monks who believes in mortification of the flesh and believes that pulling arm hair is a really good way to go about that, this is the perfect watch for you. But this bracelet absolutely drove me freaking crazy. It's not even I'm out sporting or doing something like that. I'm driving along, yoink, arm hair goes. Typing at the computer, yoink, there go the arm hairs. Absolutely ugly. I hated wearing this watch for any long period of time because the freaking arm hair thing drives me crazy. And so if you are completely bare-wristed or you are willing to go on ahead and just go to a waxing salon and say, yeah, right here, thank you, then this is a great choice for you. Otherwise, no, this drove me absolutely up a wall. And so the fact that this bracelet loves arm hair so much that it's willing to steal them from you at every opportunity, oh man, that's ugly. So, final conclusion, this is a watch that I feel has a lot of style to it. but it has a lot less substance. And the further you are away from it, the better it seems. At some level, there's a lot to love here. It's a nice size with nice features. It looks quite good, a GMT bezel, it's jeweler-free, and it has an undeniable style to it. I mean, some people hate it. My wife absolutely hated the look of this guy, but there is definitely a style here, and I can see that very easily appealing to a lot of people out there in the world. However, when you look more closely, you realize that the movement is super basic. It's a little pricier than it feels like it should be. The lume is awful. The handset is a little bit off. The crystal is plastic. The water resist is weak. The availability is kind of crappy. And the bracelet is just terrible on the wrist. For me, the bracelet was the sticking point. It was just like, no matter how much I like any of the other elements of it, I hated wearing this watch because it was constantly causing me low amounts of pain. And not just like a constant aching pain. No, it was like punctual. So I'm just like having a conversation, and I'm like, and people are looking at me like, you okay? Yeah, it's my watch. And they're just like, what are you, Nick? Do better. But anyways, so my feeling here is that this has got a lot of style for the money. And I do love seeing Timex trying stylish re-editions for good prices. And it's a good idea to make high-style pieces for low prices. This is something I liked a lot more from afar. For me, when I got it, I was excited. When I got it, I was more disappointed than anything. So ultimately, I love the idea. I love the style. But I really do wish they'd nailed those details too, so that this Q could be the A to your budget watch needs. But unfortunately, alas, it does not. So all right, I'm going to go on ahead and pack this guy up before it goes after any more of my arm hairs. And there you go. Hope this has been interesting to you, and have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.